Michael McCormack is the Deputy Prime Minister, and he joins us now from Darwin ahead of the Territory election. But nice to see you, Michael. Now, one issue I've talked about a lot are people in regional Australia and particularly regional Victoria right now who are basically living with the same restrictions as Melbourne. You just heard me talk about the people in Broken Hill who've got, the 07 in front of their number. They've got the same, times that are different in summer, but they can't cross to go to Adelaide, all the rest of it here. Do we have to have a conversation about understanding that regional Australia, while part of states, is essentially virus-free and should be allowed to cross borders?
I think that conversation should have happened some weeks ago, Paul, and you mentioned Broken Hill. Let's talk about Mallee, a third of Victoria, 82,000 square kilometres, represented superbly by Anne Webster. Much of that electorate is actually closer to Adelaide than it is to Melbourne, and yet they have so many restrictions now. Of course, stage 3 lockdown, can't get to South Australia, locked up, and they've got 13 cases, all very much in the recovery mode. It's a situation that has caused such heartache. So many livelihoods and businesses now placed at risk because of the restrictions that fine electorate is now under, and yet very limited cases, all very much in the recovery mode, and poor Anne is pulling her hair out.
Well, I mean, even, we've got this scenario in New South Wales where, as you know, there are some people that are trying to make their way from Victoria back to the ACT. I think there's been a bit of a let on that at the moment. But the absurdity that once you're at the Victorian border, where there's 0 cases in Wodonga, that you can't cross to the southern New South Wales, where there are 0 cases right now, deeply frustrating for people.
Well, it's affecting farmers, Paul. It's affecting farmers who've got properties either side of the Murray, and they've got calving, they've got crops to pick, they've got fruit to pick, crops to harvest, I should say, fruit to pick, all sorts of issues. But I was told by Mark Colton of an example where one of his constituents couldn't get over the border for his 12-year-old daughter's important hospital appointment at Toowoomba. He's a single dad, so he drove back, having been rebuffed at the border, got in his prime mover and took her across that way. Now, I know there's going to be all sorts of anomalies like that, but surely in this day and age we can work through those things. And I appreciate that we're taking the best medical advice, but there are so many border changes made at such, just like that, a snap of the fingers, and then people are just getting frustrated.
Well, you're in Darwin because that election's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Michael Gunner, apart from other things, have said that vote for me because I'm going to save your life, fair income. This is a bloke who has taken care of, I'll put it that way, during his administration, people have left the territory so much so that they're going to take a federal political seat away. The entire territory will be represented by one lower house member. Thousands of people lost their jobs before coronavirus. Debt was built up before coronavirus, yet he thinks he can get another few years in power based off territory for Territorians only. The real record of Gunner and the years of his administration is very different than locking the gate for COVID.
Leah Finocchiaro said in May that the debt that had been racked up, $6.2 billion at the time, was going to cost each and every Territorian around $25,000. Well, that's now blown out. It's potentially going to be at the end of this financial year somewhere in the order of $8.2 billion. Who knows? But that's what Labor does. Reckless spenders of other people's money. And of course, Michael Gunner, the Chief Minister, through this situation, through this campaign, is actually in witness protection because we haven't seen him. Yes, he's been talking about coronavirus, and that's important, and he should, because he's the leader of the territory. But the only person out there is Leah and a CLP candidates. They're the only ones out there talking policy. She's going to announce her agriculture policy tomorrow. Talked about crime yesterday, and crime is rampant under the Gunner government. But she's talking tough on that. She's in fact Leah's going to actually be the police minister should the CLP be elected on August 22, which of course, as we know, is Saturday week, not far away. And so, she's really making a determined effort to become the CLP's first female Chief Minister, and she will do a fantastic job. I've got every faith in her. She's so good, Paul. You need to get her on your show.
We will. We'll do it next week for her and for you, no question, and for the people of the Territory. Let's have a look at again, what Michael Gunner said, this whole sort of vote for me, save your life rubbish. Have a look.
I'm asking Territorians to stick with me, to stick with my team. We'll do whatever it takes to save your life. We're working towards at least an 18-month window from today, towards the end of next year, is how we're starting to resource our borders. We're recruiting extra police to be able to make sure we keep those hard border controls in place.
OK, let's talk about the jobs record, though. As I said, people have left the Territory. Fewer people in the joint than were there when he started, fewer jobs than when he started, and that's not COVID.
Well, you mentioned the number of seats, and what we need to do is get the Territory population up such that the AEC then can't actually look at the Northern Territory and say, we need to take a seat away. If you're in Katherine or Alice Springs or Tennant Creek, you don't want your political representative in Darwin because it's a long, long drive. We talk about Mallee being a third of Victoria. I mean, the electorates up here, the areas up here, the regions of the Territory are just massive. And, of course, there's two seats, Lingiari and Solomon, represented at the moment by Luke Gosling and Warren Snowden. But the fact remains Territorians deserve representation, and I appreciate they deserve good representation, and hopefully Leah and a CLP team can be those representatives in the Territory government after August 22, Paul.
All the best. Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister.
Thanks,
See you
Paul.
later. Michael McCormack there in Darwin, hearing conversation.